we're going to have a one-off international round the week after the grand final, with the grand final being, under option 1 that we discussed last week, these are the only ways I can feasibly see it fitting in, you see. Then if we are, then we could have second-tier nations playing second-tier nations, so there's no reason why we can't have Scotland against Jamaica, France against Wales, as well on that weekend slate.
No, that's true.
Is kind of the way I would think to still help those other teams have some preparation, rather than see them getting tonked by England.
Yeah. This is the difficulty. You're trying to, you've lost your, your potential, the team that you're more than likely going to be playing in the semis or the final next year. So you're looking for another opponent of a similar stature, and you're struggling because of that. And actually, as you say, your next best opponent might be the guy who's competing for that jersey of yours, isn't it? The next choice England fullback or whatever.
Yeah.
Might be your best competition.
Interestingly there, though, neither of us went for that obvious most popular choice, England versus the Exiles.
I never took to it as a concept going back. So I don't know. It doesn't feel like it was, as you said, it wasn't massively successful at the time, certainly the second time round. And I don't see that it would be any different this time. I don't know what's different this year than it was then.
Other than, I suppose, some of the names, but whether those names would want to play. I think everyone will be keen to see their families at the end of this year, once we're able to. And I wouldn't be stopping James Maloney or Sonny Bill Williams or Conrad Hurrell or any of these players that you think would be great names to have in that side up against England. How fantastic would that be? Everyone would want to go and watch that. I wouldn't begrudge them going back straight away as soon as they can to spend time with their family.
No, of course not.
Even though I think we could put together a really, really bloody good exile side that'll give an England side a test. So, from that point of view, it'd be good. But I think it's the other things that we've talked about. It limits the impacts of those things, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's the most popular option, so we'll see if anything can happen. I'm sure Sean Wayne will be working as hard as he can with the people around him at the RFL to get something to happen. So we'll see what happens there. That's the news for this week. Make sure if any news story takes your interest in the next week, then get in with your views. If we have a poll, that'll be good too. We want to hear from you. I can't think of what poll we might run. We won't bother running a salary cap one because by the time we run it, it's already done in it. So there's no point doing that. There's nothing to talk about.
And we're all unanimous, so it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing to talk about there. But if anything interesting comes up in the week, or anything, something along those lines, any new news about when the game's going to restart or anything, we will whack our poll out for you to get around. Okay. It's the most exciting thing that we've had happen for some time. It's real life match reviews time. Alan, it's incredibly exciting. It's been amazing. I know I was missing it. Live sport, but live rugby league especially. I know I was missing it. But I didn't know how good it'd feel on Saturday morning when I finally got to actually sit down and watch a game live. It just felt so fantastic. Not knowing the outcome, going one way or the other, watching the Storm Cronulla game and kind of having a bit of a dog in the fight, as it were, with the British connections in that Cronulla side and stuff. Oh, it was unbelievable. I've not had my Cronulla shirt off since.
You mean Canberra? You said Cronulla 3 times now.
Fucking hell, Canberra. I've not had my Canberra shirt off. Literally, I haven't. I don't know what I'm bloody wearing, obviously.
That's how excited you were.
That's how excited I was. That's how excited I was. So, the first game, of course, that was back, and it looks like a lot of you guys were excited because it got the most fan reviews, and that was the Broncos versus the Eels, and the Eels handed out a hammering in front of a very noisy but even-handed fan base, which we'll get onto. It was Eels 34, Broncos 6. Herbie Farnworth did play off the bench for the Broncos, looked to get involved as much as he possibly could when he came on the pitch, but by that time the game was done and the goose was cooked, as it were. So let's get into the fan views and see what everyone else made of it first.
Yep, so we'll start with Fat Boy Rob said, "Welcome back, old friend. I wasn't going to watch after watching 30 seconds of the soilless German footy, but the crowd noises were bob on. Good of the Brisbane crowd to cheer the Eels all the way. Good game. Eels pissed it. The 6-mile rule is good, but could lead to some big scores. 2020 Cats would smash both these teams. Hashtag fact."
No. Joshua said, "I thought the game was interesting how even though the players had been off the pitch as long as they had, they played so well. There were a few mistakes from the Broncos when they were under pressure, but the Eels played really well and deserved to come out on top."
Genghis Campbell said, "Got to love the 6 again rule and dubbed crowd noises. Atmosphere way better than expected. Great to be back."
Rich Wilkinson said, "Para had too much for the Bronx, but Brisbane made so many errors they never had a chance. They blew 2 clear chances in the NRL. That's enough to get hammered."
Alan Walker says, "Get that in ya!"
Alex Boris de Pleffel Johnson said, "Distressed to see our penal colony putting us to shame by restarting, although no doubt these chaps are encouraged by a good old British thrashing. By comparison, Workington Man has been made idle, as we knew would happen in 1895. I propose that the RFU forcibly regains control of the Northern Union to rug and maul these Northern fellas back to work. Weren't Parramatta good though? Stay alert."
And the last one on this one from Tom Andrews said, "Oh, it's good to have Rugby League back. Amen, brother. Not a classic game, but it's live action, so we loved it. Loved the virtual crowd order and the amplified on-field noises. Would have been great for new viewers. Hearing the hits is great and will make people come back to watch more. Great opportunities for the game to showcase itself."
Yeah, so people have touched on a couple of the key points. The sound. Let's talk about the sound first of all. Al, are they playing that noise in the stadium, or are they just putting it on top of the TV footage that we're seeing?
Right. I think it's just on the TV. Because so I watched some of round 2, which obviously was also in empty stadiums, but they didn't have this on the coverage. And the difference it makes is massive.
Yeah.
To your viewing experience. Obviously, it doesn't change what they're doing on the pitch, but the difference it makes to the viewing experience is unbelievable. I've got to say, it's, and I've heard whispers that other sports are looking at it. I'm guessing it's
League are looking at it, aren't they?
I'm guessing it's a kind of a Sky, kind of News International wide thing that maybe they're looking at. I don't know. Looking to share because it's borderline genius. It really is. How effective it was.
Like when you had the close-up shots, like where you couldn't see any crowd anyway, you'd barely know.
Yeah.
The whoever was operating it was operating it very well. Like the noise rose up at the right times. There was big reactions at the right time. It wasn't too much more delayed than what you would get in a stadium anyway. It was a little bit more delayed, but not too much more delayed. It was great, apart from the fact that you heard the same level of cheering, I suppose, for the away side as the home side, which is a bit strange. Yeah. But if anything, that added to the sense of occasion, because you only get that at big occasions, Magic Weekend or the Grand Final or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to, because obviously it is. It felt like it was like lots of layers of sound is what it sounded like to me. So you've got this background burble that they can obviously control by kind of up and down, but there's obviously there's whistling bits and there's shouting bits, and it's very, very good. Very impressive, I've got to say. And I hadn't picked up anyone speaking about it before it started. So
No.
it surprised me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Jimmy Anderson talked about it on the Tailenders podcast this week as well. How good it was. So that's rugby league getting out there and kind of leading, which is absolutely fantastic. And one of the other things that made me think it's only on the TV footage is you haven't lost the noise of those contacts that we had in round 2, and they must be echoing around them big empty stadiums. And creating some cracking noises, but the contact is brilliant.
Yeah, it felt. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I haven't. Well, I'd say I haven't seen it for weeks, but we've all been watching old games.
Yeah.
But this just felt. It felt like harder hits. I don't know why. It felt like there was like 4 or 5 weeks of frustration built up in that kind of contact.
I think
and they were whacking each other.
It was real life intensity, and you don't feel that intensity when you're watching an old game as much, even though it might be have been as intense at the time. It's not. It's been and done. It's gone.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know. But yeah, it really did feel that intensity. So that's the sort of sound put to one side. The 6 more rule. Yep. Everyone's a fan.
Yeah, I've got to say, I think I was probably one of the most cynical ones last week. It works. Might be more by accident than judgment, but it works. It does create large flows of possession one way, and the ebb and flow of the game is more concentrated one way than the other. And you saw this one in the first game. Parramatta kind of benefited from it, and they really got a roll on as a result. But it's not to say that those things wouldn't have been penalties anyway. So I don't know.
Would have been. That's the point, isn't it? They would have been penalties.
It was interesting. We'll talk about it in other games, but it appears that the referees used it to a greater or lesser extent. Well, some barely used it.
On one of Sunday's games, they talked about. I think it was one of Sunday's games. It might have been one of Saturday's games, but they talked about the average number of penalties so far being down. But the difference, but the average amount of 6 agains that were given in a game filled that gap. And it actually did then make it back to effectively the same amount of penalties. So the same amount of stuff was getting picked up by the referee, because it's only one referee. Let's not forget.
We need to talk about that as well. Briefly.
But it's speed. But it's I think the concept of it speeding up the game, it doesn't speed up the game as much as people think. But in terms of the actual play that's happening. But what it does do is it takes out those pauses from play, which is kicking to touch and throwing the ball back in, tapping it on your foot, everyone getting reset. So that's where the speed of it comes in. And that's the bit that I hadn't really quite appreciated, that there's going to be no break in play. The referee's calling the 6 again, whilst the play of the ball's happening, that would have been happening anyway.
Yes.
So that's where the speed of the game comes in. Now, will people adjust? Will people learn? Will people get fitter, so maybe get better in the wrestle again? Because the wrestle had gone to an extent this weekend, and I think that's probably a bit about lack of conditioning, lack of training, that had fallen out a bit, and the player with the impetus, the player going forward, was kind of winning more collisions maybe. So that maybe we might see come back around a little bit, because we're not seeing more 6 agains than we were seeing ruck penalties, is the kind of point I was making with the numbers there. But it is good. It isn't bad. Like, I was similarly with you, kind of thinking, will it work right? And actually, the more I think about it, the more it's a positive, because I'm always the first to say, don't go for 2. Well, this removes an option of going for 2 when you're on the in an attacking position. It makes you have to try and score a try, because you don't get that penalty. You have to play on the new tackle count. You don't get a penalty to kick for 2. So I think that's a positive as well that I hadn't really thought about from it properly. So yeah, I'm on the I like it category. One thing I will say with a note of caution, and I noticed this a little bit in